joining, but please do continue your story with the motorbikes, please.
Yeah. So yeah, the last thing I want to say is, the lane speeding, everyone does it here, and that's the reason actually I started driving motorbikes because I hate traffic. It's just a waste of life. Um, but the funny thing is that very often you go to the front of like a huge queue, and there are people trying to race you, right? So you can see that they're looking at you, they're looking at the green light, and they try to race you, which has
I mean, they can
absolutely
try.
no. There's absolutely no point. There's absolutely no point. My current bike, I think, has like 2.9 seconds to 100 and 3.2 seconds to 200 kilometers per hour. Right? It's just pointless, frankly.
Yeah, but a car
But
driver can dream because at least I'll speak for myself, not for the other car drivers. I would love to be a motorbike driver.
yeah,
And
I
then,
started last year, so everything you can do, you just
yeah, but
all you need to do
we
is
have,
just step forward.
I have a small thing that keeps me from doing that because the motorbike is really, really heavy, and I'm scared that if it ever falls on me, I will not get out of it because I already did that once.
It depends which motorbike, really. So there are heavy motorbikes and there are light motorbikes, right? So the light ones will have around 160 kilos, but the center of the mass is really low, so it's not gonna crush you, right? I fall many times, frankly. So it happened to me several times. Not a big deal. And I really, so I'm really, short and small people riding them as well. So it depends on the bike, pretty much,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So there's some naked bikes which are really light. And as I said, I only started last year, you know.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
and I also had kind of a stop in my case because about 10 years ago I broke my spine and I was paralyzed for like 8 months. So that's sort of, and that was because of speeding, frankly. So you can imagine for me, it was kind of hump as well, right, to do what I do. But I'm glad. All I need to do is just be stubborn.
Yeah, be stubborn and do it. Just do it, right?
Exactly. I mean, you have one life. That's what I say to myself, right? You can sit comfortably in a chair, you can sleep your whole life, or you can do something with it, right? So
Absolutely.
it's about the experience, right, and what you get out of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And what we're going to do now, gentlemen, is start our live stream. And I think I will pass on the mic to you, gentlemen, and I will go into background. And I wish you a fun time with our audience and let me know if I can help with
Do you know
anything.
how many people are actually will be there? Do you know?
I know, but I cannot tell you because then maybe you would get nervous or something. I will tell you after the live stream.
Okay.
Awesome. Michal, the stage is yours, gentlemen.
Thanks, Sandra, for the opportunity to host this webinar today, and thanks everyone for joining. So before I hand over to our fantastic speakers, Mikołaj and Marcin, let me quickly introduce who we are. We are Unravel. We are part of Spirosoft Group. We are basically a creative force within the group, meaning that we provide mostly product design and product management services. And today's talk is going to be about design systems, which is really at the core of our offering. So whether you are looking for solutions that allow for better efficiency, that will basically ensure consistency within your product or products, and in the end make space for innovation within them, I would say this is the topic for you. So yeah, handing over to Mikołaj. Have fun.
Okay, let me share my screen. 1 second. Okay. Okay, so my name is Mikołaj and I'm senior product designer at Unravel. For the past few years, I've been focusing mainly on design systems and UI design in general. And today, Martin and I want to show you how design system can bridge the gap between design and development. So yeah, go ahead, Marcin. Maybe you will tell something about you.
Okay, just a few words about me. So I've been involved in web development for about 14 years, if not more. Went through several stages. Currently dealing with sysops, front end, back end, and mainly finding solutions and architecting solutions for companies. Yeah, and I think today's presentation will help us understand what leaps can be done and how we can simplify this stuff for the future.
Okay, so for today, we will start with a quick introductions to design systems, what they are and how they can help you and your project. And next, we will explore design tokens and some of efficient ways to use them. And after that, Marcin will show you a live implementation demo and whole of this process live. And finally, we will end with Q&A session. Okay. So I think design system goes way beyond just a few components and color palette. And it's not only the way to run your product, but it's a product itself, or should be a product itself. And so if design system is like a normal digital product, besides, of course, components, assets, color palettes, it should contain elements like documentation, toolset, workflows, guidelines, principles, and much, much more. And finally, all of these combined together can simplify design workflow and speed up the development process. So, for example, thanks to guidelines, patterns, or design tokens, well-structured design tokens, designers have less decisions to make because they don't need to think about what color they should use or for what font they should pick, and less decision is less chaos. And from the developer's perspective, dedicated design system team can handle things like accessibility in components, responsiveness, and much more. So the product team and developers inside this team can focus directly on the product itself. And of course, thanks to all of this, it should be much easier for designers and developers to communicate between each other. So in essence, I think that we can say that design system is a shared language between designers and developers. Okay, so let's take a look at this example button. It's, as you can see, it's the outcome of many design choices like padding, background color, text color, or gap between elements inside, or this border radius. And designers can set all of these values in their favorite design tool, like Figma, for example, and basically define how this button should look like. And in the meantime, developers can bring it to life by adding some logic to these components, defining interactive states, and things like that. And again, defining how this button should look like. And in most cases, these two workflows are really separated from each other. Developers have to manually copy all of these values from Figma, talk with designers, and much more. And so to create a seamless experience, we need to bridge the gap between design and development. So the solution to this are design tokens. Design tokens can store all of these values like padding, gap, or border radius, and just make this everything reusable and more convenient. And I think we can say that these values are basically decisions made by designers in the design phase. And in that case, the main goal of this concept is to store key decisions as design tokens. And thanks to that, and thanks to design system in general, your product can achieve consistency and efficiency. For example, if you have multi-brand, multi-platform, or white label products, all of these design decisions can stay consistent across all contexts. And this can be extremely useful if you use different technology on each product, or you have big application portfolio and you want to have consistent experience across the apps. And it also provides a solution that works on any platform. As you can see on this example, each application can use elements from design system like design tokens, icons, illustrations, images, and more. And thanks to that, customers will have consistent user experience on each platform. Okay, on the other hand, you can change values of these tokens for specific brands or teams. And this means that you can easily white label your app or publish it under different brands. So as you can see here on this example, we have basically the same app, but with different look and feel. And this is because even though both of these apps use the same design tokens, we have different values for this token depending on the brand. And even with these changes, the design system and these design tokens still act as single source of truth, but the final look for the end customer can change a lot based on the team or brand. Okay, now let's think about how we can translate our button into design tokens in Figma and in code. So as you can see, we have here all of these decisions, these values like paddings, text color, background color, gap, border radius, etc. And without any context to this, designers will have to think too much about these values, like what background color should I pick for hover state, or what font color I should use, and things like that, instead of focusing on product and business value itself. And of course, in most cases, probably developers will have the same problem. So going one step further, we can make variables in Figma and store these decisions there, right? These variables is basically a design tokens. And instead of 60px for border radius, for example, we can have a variable like button border radius, or instead of hex color, we can use button background as a background color. It will be much easier. And in CSS, we can basically make the same thing, right? We have CSS variables, it works basically the same. And also use these design tokens instead of plain values. But now to make it really, really useful, we need to synchronize these values between each other. And there are many ways to do this. Today, we want to show you one of them. And now Marcin will show you this process in practice. Thanks.
Okay. So I'm going to take over the screen, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and up front, I'm going to apologize for such a large screen, which I have. It's very wide. However, it has some advantages, and one of them is that we can view the sides, stuff side by side. So I suggest you move it full screen to better see. To start this presentation, to start the demo, I'll just explain where we are at the moment. So there is a design here in Figma, which is kind of a white label product. We can see a white version of a login screen and also a dark version of a login screen. This design has been sort of moved as a website. So it has been created as a website and deployed to GitHub pages just for the purpose of this demo. I'm going to show you where the site is. It's right here. And as you see, it looks basically the same. So the only difference is that this is a web version of that, and we have a fully functional login page, which looks exactly the same. Now, you may now wonder how actually the connection between the Figma and this design is made. I'm going to explain you step by steps, but also showing you a demo how we can automate some of this process. Let's say. Having stuff being pushed from Figma to development has a couple of advantages. One of them is that we sort of bypass the whole sort of development cycle. So in many companies which I work with in the past, normally the process is that the new design comes out, the design is then spec'd, and then it's sort of pushed into a sprint at some point to a developer to pick it up and then sort of work with it. Now, we can automate this process at least to a certain point where stuff like changing the colors or changing the buttons or changing the roundness can be sort of done by the UI designer. It is a controlled process, but it can be pushed to a testing. So it could be automatically deployed to the site. And for example, for the A/B testing or customer testing or brand testing. So there are many changes which could be done, which do not really involve developer at any point in time. There could be a person which just sort of oversees the process, but the whole cycle gets much quicker. So for that purpose, actually having this site here, so I'm going to demo that we have the light version and also we have the dark version. Then I switch up here. And just to demo that, I'm going to change a couple of things inside of these designs and see how we can kick off the process to deploy this to production, to our website. So for the first one, I'm going to try to change the background color, the main color for the buttons, which is, you can see it's slightly different for the black and white version of the site. And for that, I will go to local variables, open them up, and you can see there are lots of colors in here. They're all defined by the UI person and all being used in the designs. I'm going to pick one which will be our branding color and simply change that to something which we can distinguish quite easily. Let's change it to maybe this. Okay, you can see the design updated here nicely. We also going to change color on the black version. Let's try to even do something similar. So for this one, I'm going to pick yellow. So again, it's clearly visible, or maybe orange. Oh, there you go. So we've made those changes, but also there are other stuff which we can change. All the chart colors, icon colors, border roundings. So you can see there are lots of variables here, including strokes, inputs, background. If you want to change the background color of the input, for example, we can see that there's a background here color defined. And I can change it to be, for example, the same as the stroke. So they just appear like a one field. So if I look where the stroke is there, we got stroke input, which is the stroke which goes here. And by the way, I sort of remember these variables, but they can always be found by just clicking on the element. They're listed here on the left. So you can see on the right, sorry. So you can see the first one here is a stroke input rest, which is basically the input of this element, the stroke. And I'm going to copy the color. So we know that we're going to go with exactly the same. So it's that one. Let's just copy this. And I'm going to go for background and change the input background from white to this color. Oh, sorry, it looks like I haven't copied that. Let's just do this again. I've just switched from Windows to Mac, and the keyboard shortcuts work differently, obviously. There you go. So input rest. Let's change that to this one. Okay, and you can see there was an update here. The fields are now filled in. We can do the same here. I'm not going to bother. But also, I'm going to change one more thing. I'm going to actually remove all the border radius here. So the buttons will appear kind of square. And in order to do that, if I look here, border radius, these are all radiuses which are being used on the site. I will just simply zero them for now. So we can see how the actually screen is updating. And then we're going to try to push the change to sort of a test environment to see how this reflects on the site. Okay, I've just done that. And you can see everything is sort of squared now. We've lost the border radius, but let's assume that this is what we wanted and how we wanted it. There's, as I said, lots of variables we can deal with for the charts, for the icons. I'm going to leave it like that because that gives an idea of what the change we've pushed. Now, if I want to, by being a UI developer, if I want to now test this or push it to the environment, I can use a plugin, which I'm going to explain in a moment what the plugin does and what it is. But it allows me basically, with the right configuration, to send these design tokens or these variables to a certain GitHub URL. And that GitHub URL will then perform a certain actions on this. I'm going to guide you through the process and show you how the process looks like. I can add a commit message here, and I'm going to, I'll just call it updated design. Right, that could be anything, explaining what the change was. The main purpose is that now the design will push to the GitHub, and in our case, if I open that one up, I'm going to actually move this side here so we can clearly see. You can see the action. There was an action which was triggered automatically. That's what was configured in GitHub, that wherever the tokens are being pushed, it should trigger an action. And what this action does, it receives the file, but it also formats it in the right way, in a sense that what the plugin for Figma is sending is one big compressed string that has to be broken down, nicely formatted, so it's readable. And also, it has to be changed. Some of the values there, for example, they're not really correct color values. So this process updates that. And the effect of that process should actually finish by now. There we go, finished. The effect of that is a new pull request. You can see that this actually happened automatically. This is the commit. I've added updated design. And now I've mentioned before that this is a controlled process. So the first step of the process was that we've just pushed a new change to any of our tokens to GitHub. And then magically, it went through the process, it compiled them, and it created a PR for us. So that hasn't moved to production yet, but there's a pull request waiting. And at this step, this could be automated. We can enable auto merge pull requests, or it could be reviewed by a senior designer or someone who actually is in charge of design and see what is actually changed. And if I click on that and go to files changed, you will see the changes I've made. And I was mentioning before that the file has to be reformatted to a certain format, and that's because of that. So we can see what has changed and where it has changed, right? So we can see the file design tokens. So this is the file we've created with the previous step. This value here was updated to that value, and so on. So there is a control process. There's only changes which we've made. These are the changes to our roundness. We went from 8 to 0, from 8 to 0. And at this point, again, there might be a person which has to sort of approve these changes, so they could be merged. And if I just simply approve them like that, submit approval, we can now merge this pull request. Now, when this happens, there will be another process which will sort of kick in, merging that and going to GitHub Actions again. And you will see that there's another process which kicked in, again, another action, which now, with a new change to our main branch, it will take these JSON tokens created previously and make something from it. So in our case, we're actually creating a whole set of CSS variables. We use something called there's something called the style dictionary to do so. I'm going to go through that a bit later. But what it does, it allows us to basically take these design tokens and compile them to either CSS variables or Android variables, Swift, we name it. It supports pretty much all the major platforms, including Flutter. Okay, that has now finished, and you can see another process kicked in. So I was waiting for that to build the page and deploy it for us. So that takes about a minute or so. We can track it here, but a bit of a luck, we're gonna see a message popping out here that there was an update to the page. There you go, both of them going. So let's wait for a minute, and oh, there you go. That's now deployed. We got a nice message here saying the site has been updated, and let's reload it. And we can see that all the changes which we've made in Figma are now live, actually, without any coding required, without any change. All we did, we just approved the PR, right? Which, as I said, it could also be automated. Now, this can deploy to one environment or many environments, and in fact, it can deploy to at least 2 environments, so we can do A/B testing with the customers, or to a separate environment where we want to demo a change to a customer, for example, right? Both of the changes to white and black versions are deployed. So just guide you simply through the process. So the process was made to be as simple as it can be. The less moving parts, the better. Mainly because someone has to support it, someone has to debug it, but also it's more scalable that way. Because right now, all we do, we only use GitHub Actions. The GitHub Actions actually live in one folder in GitHub called Workflows. And there are 2 of them. And as you see, there's a folder called Update Tokens, which sort of deals with all the decoding of the file name and creates a pull request with a nice name for us. And we have another one which sort of builds and deploys the page after the changes have been made. So that's actually pretty simple. Both of them use a plugin or maybe a software called Style Dictionary, and you can see here that it actually allows you to configure which builds you want to have: SCSS, Android, Compose, iOS, iSwift. So there are many of them. Currently, I'm just using one. So there's a small configuration file here which basically decides what should be compiled. But at the end of the compilation, if we open up our source folder, we will see something called Figma variables, and that's actually is being sort of produced by this token. And you can see after all the corrections and formatting, all our variables are available here. And the developers, all I need to do, they just reference it once. And in fact, if we have another application, which would be, for example, Flutter, this can create both of them at the same time. So both of the applications could be created and deployed at the same time with the change. Currently, I'm just limiting this to this web application, which I'm using. So I think that's about it. That kind of concludes the demo. It was a quick one. I'll be awaiting your questions, and I can obviously go a bit deeper where it is. I can briefly show you how actually the tokens are being stored themselves. They look like that, and that's after formatting. But we need it in the format, so it's kind of really readable. They're all nested, so if you open this with any code editor, you'll be able to collapse certain places and stuff, and that's very useful for comparing files, especially diffing files, and also keeping a version control, right? So if we ever have to revert, we can simply revert the file, and the process will kick off automatically. Okay, right, that's about it from my side. Thank you very much. I'll be welcome your questions a bit later.
Thanks a lot, Martin. We have quite a few questions asked on the chat, but before we go into that, let me present just one final slide for the webinar. Well, actually, it's 2. So here's the main takeaways, and while you take a look at that, I highly encourage everyone to visit our website. We have a dedicated subpage about design systems where we present our case studies, and also on the blog we have a few articles, I would say quite in-depth, about design systems. And on top of that, there is also the link to GitHub where you can find the code for what Martin was presenting today. You might either take a screenshot, but if you don't do it now, you will get an email with both of these links pretty soon. And that's pretty much it. So thanks for that. And now I'll let Mikołaj and Martin answer any questions you might have.
So I think it's more related to the design part instead of development. So to be honest, it really depends from the project, I think. I really like the native solution that we have in Figma, which is variables. But unfortunately, it's not possible to get these variables only by Figma API. It's only in the enterprise plan in Figma. And there are many of plugins that will allow you to get these variables from Figma. And personally, I don't have my favorite, or I don't use these plugins a lot. I think it's more for Marcin.
What kind of phrasing technology you prefer for handling files? Okay. So to be honest, I think generally whatever we export at it's just not just from Figma, but generally wherever you export the data, you have like two major formats you can use. You can either use XML or JSON. I prefer JSON because it's much way readable than XML. In terms of storing them, for me, the best storage is always Git, mainly because of the revisions, right? And the version control, which we have. That's based on my experience when I was trying to dig out a file sometime back, which I've lost or overwritten at some point in time. So I'm the sort of person when I push pretty much everything into GitHub.
You're mute, Sandra.
Of course I am. Thank you for that. Marcin said one more thing, and I'm gonna just put it on the screen so you can read it. And basically, he thanks you, gentlemen.
Yeah, I don't think having even a complex JSON is an issue, right? End of the day, it has to be made in a way so you can sort of read this easily, right? And no matter how deep it's going to be or how big it's going to be, the plugins, the software there, which allows you to sort of manipulate JSON or search through JSON. So that's pretty much, even in a browser, there's something called JSON Viewer. If you install this as an extension, it allows you to initially collapse all the JSON and just search through this. So it's the most common format. I think it's going to be an issue. The only issue we may face actually is with the payload. If you decide to use GitHub Actions, I mean, in our case, we did so because it's a out-of-the-box solution and we don't have to do anything else. But in fact, you can send these tokens pretty much anywhere. So you can have your own Lambda functions in AWS, which will do similar things, but it will accept a bigger payload, for example, right? Or you will actually modify a file in a point.
Last call for questions. Going once, going twice. And I think there are no more questions. So thank you, gentlemen, for taking the time for the webinar. And thank you for everybody listening. As Michal already said, all of you will receive a follow-up email tomorrow with the recording if you want to revisit it. And I will make sure that the two links that you mentioned will be in the follow-up email. Gentlemen, thank you once again and wishing you a wonderful day.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.